Hey, this is Math 7, Unit 7, Lesson 5, using equations to solve for unknown angles. So we're going to figure out missing angles using equations today. From the first activity, it says, Tyler thinks that this figure has enough information to figure out the values of A and B. Do you agree? And explain your reasoning. So when we look here, what we notice is that we see that, yes, we know that this is a supplementary group of angles here. And I could say that for sure that A plus 90 plus B would equal 180 degrees. And we could say that's true from the given information. The thing is, he believes he could say what A and B are equal to. Well, let's subtract 90 first of all. If we get rid of the 90 from this equation right here, we're left with A plus B equal 90 degrees. From this alone, are you able to determine what A and B actually are? You know that A plus B have to add up to 90, but can you tell what they actually are going to be without doing any kind of measurement? The answer would be no, we couldn't. We don't know for sure. This could be a combination of 60 plus 30, that equals 90. You could have a 45 plus 45, that equals a 90. You could have a 50 plus 40, that equals 90. There's a whole variety of number combinations that A and B could be and still add up to 90 degrees. So we can't say for certain what the values of A and B would actually be here. In the next activity, it says Elena and Diego each wrote equations to represent these diagrams. For each diagram, decide whether each equation you agree with and solve it. So decide you agree with it and then solve it. You can assume that angles that look like right angles are indeed right angles. So let's decide, based on the diagram, whose equation we agree with for each one of these. Alright, so here we go. In the first one, Elena says that x equals 35, that this value here matches that value right there. Diego says that x plus 35 equals 180 degrees. Well, I would probably want to go ahead and say let's go with Diego, because what Diego's saying is that the value of x right there, this value, x plus the 35 combine to give me 180 degrees. That is what Diego is sharing there, and that makes the most sense. When we look at this, what do we have? We have an x right there, and we add the 35 to it. That's going to be combined together to give you 180 degrees. So we would agree in this case here with Diego, right? Elena must be confusing her letters because 35 is actually equal to what? It's actually equal to W. So maybe that's what Elena was thinking. For number 2, Elena says 35 plus W plus 41 equals 80. So she says that this 35 right here plus this W right there plus that 41 equal 180, which is a supplementary angle. That sure does look right. Let's see what Diego said. Diego says 35 plus just W equals 180. So he wants to eliminate that part right there and say that just this distance from here to here is 180 degrees. Well, obviously it's a little bit short, isn't it? So we would agree with Elena's idea for combining all three of those numbers and variables together. Number 3, Elena says that W plus 35 equals 90. Remember what they said, that anything that looks like a 90 degree angle is. So keep that rule in mind. This looks like the corner of a piece of paper, doesn't it? And if I put a little piece of paper there, that seems to fit in there no problem. So that's a 90 degrees. So that seems okay. We could probably assume that W plus 35 equals 90 degrees. Now Diego says that 2 W's plus 35 equals 90. So he's saying this whole thing is 90 degrees. Well, that's not quite right, is it? Right? 2W plus 35 equals something, but it's not a 90 degree angle. We want that 90 degree, that square shape right there. So we're going to agree with Elena on this one here. That makes the most sense. On our next one, it says that Elena says 2W plus 35 equals 90. So W plus W plus 35 equals 90. Diego just has 1 W and a 35 equal 90. Well, let's see what we have. This angle here is directly across from that space right there. That means it's a vertical angle, and it would be the same value, 35 degrees. So when I look then at this space, which sure does look like a square or a right angle, when I add all three of those together, what do I end up with? I end up with a W plus a 35 plus another W being equal to 90. Those W's can combine to be simply 2W plus 35 equals 90. So because I know what the vertical angle is, I would agree with Elena that 2W plus 35 equals 90. And this last one here, Elena says that W plus 148 equals 180. So this little piece right there, W, plus this part right there, 148, equals 180 degrees, supplementary. That appears to be right. Let's see what Diego said. Diego said that X plus 90, so Diego says that this part plus 90, here's a 90 degrees, equals 148. Okay, so there's 90 degrees right there, right? So Diego says this whole thing right there equals 148. Well, that's an excellent question, isn't it? Okay. Notice here that for Diego, Elena, first of all, let's see what about Elena. Let's start with Elena. Elena says W plus 148 equals 180. That is true statement, right? This is true because it's supplementary. No problem. But Diego's saying something a little different. I'm going to erase my little mark here for Elena's little W part here, because what Diego is saying is Diego says that from X, all the way to this 90, here to here, this part is actually going to be equal to this part right there. So how could that be possible? All right, so take a look at it there. When you shade it in, sometimes it's easier to see what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and just shade out, let's use the green here. I'm going to get rid of the W part, because the W is right here, this little slice of the pie right there. That's W. And when I color that in, notice that across from here, what do I have? I have a vertical angle across from the W that's pretty easy to see. And that's pretty easy to notice, like, oh, that's a vertical angle. But once I do that, what do you see happening with the rest of this little puzzle piece here? I have an angle right there of 148, right? And what is it across from? It's right across from here, which is what? Across from the X, and this combined part over here, which is 90. So, indeed, X plus 90 does equal the vertical angle on the other side, 148 degrees. So they both are actually correct in this case here. It's kind of a cool problem, but you have to visually see what's going on there. So sometimes it's helpful to kind of shade things in and color stuff a little bit. In our next activity, we need to calculate the measurements here of unknown angles. We want to show our thinking and organize it so people can see what we're doing here. So for this first one, we're looking for W. What I recognize is that I have a supplementary angle here, right? So it's supplementary. What does that tell me? It tells me that W plus 124 is going to be equal to 180. So I subtract 124 from both sides, so that I find out what the value of W is, and W in this case is going to equal 56. 180 minus 124 is 56 degrees. For number 2, again, I have a supplementary set of angles there, don't I? So I know that 52 plus B plus 23 are going to add up to 180. I can combine these together first of all to end up with 52 plus 23 is 75 plus B equals 180. I can subtract 75 from both sides. That becomes 0. So that B is equal to 180 minus 75 is 105. And hopefully I'm leaving enough notes there on my steps so it's pretty clear how I'm getting to the solutions. On number 3, it says lines L and M are perpendicular. Perpendicular tells us that when those two lines are crossing, when they cross, they're forming a right angle when they make that cross. That's what perpendicular tells us. So what do we know to be true? It means we know that from here to here, this is a right angle in that little block right there. We also notice that right here, this x is going to be a vertical angle to this space right there. Alright, so this x vertically goes across here, and I have another x degree there. So inside of this space, here's my right angle inside that space right there. What I end up with is an x plus a 23 plus another x equals the right angle, which is 90 degrees. So 2x plus 23 equals 90. We can subtract 23 from both sides, so that 2x equals, we can borrow here, 67. And I can divide both sides by 2. It's not an even number, but that's okay. X is going to equal 33.5, or 33.5, for the value of x right there, and there, and there. And finally, number 4. This is very similar to the one we did a second ago, right? It helps them as if you kind of colored in a little bit to see what's going on. I have all of these, and I have this value right over there, don't I? So again, what do you see? You see that I have vertical angles, don't I? Right? The sum of these is going to match that angle right there, that vertical angle. And that's true because this one right here, we can call it x, matches this one here. That's a clear vertical angle. So let's take this part, which is m plus 66 plus m, and we're going to set it equal to that part, which is 120. So 2m plus 66 equals 120. We'll subtract 66 from both sides, so that 2m equals, and we're going to borrow there, we get 4 and 54, so we'll say 54 there. Divide both sides by 2, and m equals 27 degrees. Alright, so a couple simple steps there, but again, setting up some equations to make this work. And that really is it for today's lesson. So when we look at our summary statement here, summary says that to find an unknown angle measure, sometimes it is helpful to write and solve an equation that represents a situation. So they have an example right here to help us figure out how to solve that up there. So again, this is one where you say, well, all of this together seems to form what? It seems to form a vertical angle that matches this one right there. And so when you look at those angles together, what do you have? I have 3 x's here. I have a 90 degree there, and they're going to add up to equal the vertical side of that, angle side of that, 144, which is what you have right there, and you can work to solve and get down to x equals 18. Alright, that's the idea of today's lesson, so pause there, work on your homework, and let's come back and check that off together. Alright, so here we go for our homework for today. It says segments AB, DC, and EC intersect at point C. Angle DCE, this part right there, is 148. Find the value of x. Well, knowing that the whole thing combined is going to make a supplementary angle, that means I have an x plus 148 plus another x combined to give me a supplementary angle of 180 degrees. So I can combine my x's. 2x plus 148 equals 180. When I subtract 148 from there, I say that 2x equals, we borrow here, it's going to equal to 32. Divide both sides by 2, and x equals 16 degrees. So each of these has a value of 16 degrees. On number 2, line L right here is perpendicular to line M, meaning what? It means that all of these things together are forming a right angle right there, or I could think about it forming a right angle on the other side. Either way, I'm making a right angle here, a right angle there. So find the value of x and w. X and w are right there. All right, this one's going to be a little bit different, okay? So, a couple steps here. Knowing that I have a complementary angle I'm looking for, I can't actually do this right away because this tells me that 19 plus x plus w equals 90. That's true, but now I have two variables and I can't solve for those. I don't know what that's going to be. But notice here I have what? A supplementary angle. So let's solve this one. This tells me that w plus 138 equals 180. So I can figure out the value of w. I subtract 138 from both sides so that I have 42 is the value of w. So in this space here I can write down 42 degrees. Or I can go up to my first equation and I can substitute 42 for where I had a w. Now let's add up our whole numbers. 42 plus 19 is going to be what? 61. We're going to set that equal to 90 because I know that all this combined to make a 90-degree angle right here. That's 90 degrees, right? So I know I'm going to combine all that together. So let's subtract 61. And what do we have left? We have 29 degrees is what the value of x is going to be. So we solved for w by using supplementary, and then we did some equations to find with a complementary angle the value of x. Number 3, if you knew that two angles were complementary and were given the measure of one of those angles, would you be able to find the measure of the other angle? Okay, and the answer to this, of course, when you write out in your own words, is going to be yes, and we're going to be able to do that because we know it equals 90. So that's like when we say we have an A plus a B equals 90. If we know what one of those is going to be, we can solve for the other one with no problem at all. Alright, let's take a look at number 4. We did these in your last unit, so it's going to be a little bit of review here, and we have 3 of these for today. So let's go through this together. Alright, so first of all, we have the first one, negative 24 is greater than that value right there. So let's write this out again. I'm going to rewrite this as negative 24. Now to do an equality, what we might want to do first of all, remember, is just do a solution. So let's set it equal for now. I'm going to distribute just to save some space. So negative 6 times x is negative 6x. And negative 6 times a negative 0.5 is going to be a positive 3. Now we're going to work for a solution first. So I'm going to subtract 3. So negative 27 equals negative 6x. Divide both sides by negative 6. And negative 27 divided by negative 6 is going to be equal to a 4.5. That's my value of x that I'm going to work with. Remember, this becomes my what? We call that my boundary point. Meaning, if I have a number line, here, I put this at 4.5. And now what I want to do is go back to my original equation, right, which is here. And so I can write this down a couple ways. Let's do the shorter version. I'm going to start with this part right there. Already distributed and already separated out before I've done anything kind of crazy. So let's do this. I mean, it doesn't matter. I'll go here just to make it easier, okay? Let's do this one. So I'm going to make two things. I have to decide if it's true. Negative 24, keep the same sign orientation, is greater than negative 6, and we're going to put a value here for x plus 3. Remember, we do this 2 times. So negative 24 is greater than negative 6 times some value plus 3. Now the values I'm going to put in here is to decide which way is it going to be. Is it going to be greater than or less than, and is it true or is it not? Okay, so let's say it's going to be a value less than, right, because what we're trying to figure out is here, 4.5 is going to be greater than or less than x. We want to figure out which way that inequality is going to go. So let's pick a value less than 4.5. Let's pick, 0, right? So if I put 0 in there, what happens if I pick a number that is less than? So I put 0 here, and we end up with negative 24 is greater than 0 plus 3. Negative 24 is greater than 3. That is a false statement. That's not going to be a true statement. So because that's false, that tells me that my direction of my inequality needs to go the other way, right? It's a false statement. So I can come back over here and we can turn our direction of our inequality to go that way. And so 4.5 will be less than x is what we do for that one right there. All right, let's take a look at letter choice, letter B. Okay, and I don't really have a lot of space here, so I'm going to use another piece of paper. Okay, yeah. Actually, let's go to, I'll do the back side. So negative 8x plus 6, I think I have space over here, yeah. Negative 8x plus 6, so negative 8x plus 6 is greater than negative 30. All right, so again, we can make this into just an equation. First of all, 8x plus 6 is equal to negative 30. I subtract 6 from both sides. I have negative 8x equals negative 36. Divide both sides by negative 8, and x equals 4.5. Again, that becomes my boundary, 4.5, and we'll pick a point below it to kind of work with that there. And we have to decide, how's this going to work out here? Is x going to be, we're trying to say, is x going to be less than 4.5, or is x going to be greater than 4.5? We want to decide which way that's going to work there. How that's going to work out. One of these is going to be true for us, so let's see how this works. So we take our value of 0, because it's less than that one there. And so what we'll do, we go back to our original equation. We're going to say negative 8 times 0 being less than, right? So we're seeing if this one here less than 4.5. So I'll write it underneath here, right? So negative 8 times 0 plus 6 is greater than negative 30. So we're taking a value less than 4.5 and deciding is it true or false. That becomes 0. So 0 plus 6 is greater than negative 30. That is going to be 6 is greater than negative 30, and that is true. So since that is true, we will keep this inequality right there and say x is less than 4.5. Okay, I don't need to pick a number greater than 4.5 because there's no reason to. It's not going to work. So that becomes our true inequality. We have one more of these, letter C. Let's take a look at C. And this part might be a little bit confusing for you. There are kind of some math tricks you can use, but I'm trying to use what we did in our lesson to keep it consistent for you guys, okay? So here we have this inequality. We're going to write it I'm going to first distribute. Okay, so let's do negative 2x minus negative 2 times 3.2 is negative 6.4, and that is less than negative 15.4. So that's my initial inequality once I've distributed stuff out. I can add 6.4 to this side. So negative 2x is less than negative 15.4 plus a 6.4 is going to give me a negative 9. Okay, and I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. And so we have now, again, we can make this an equation first of all. Let's say for now that x equals negative 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. And then we said before that becomes simply what? Our boundary marker for what we're going to look at. We're going to pick a number below it and above it. And we have to decide is x going to be less than 4.5 or is x going to be greater than 4.5? All right, and that's what we have to decide. So let's pick a point less than 4.5. Let's pick 0 once again and plug that back into our equation. So we'll use this right here. We'll do negative 2x less than negative 9. So I'm just kind of going down one step there. I could plug it up here if we wanted to, but I know I'm still going to add that over there. So let's plug in 0. So negative 2 times 0 is less than negative 9. That becomes 0. Is 0 less than negative 9? That's going to be a false statement. So this one right here is false. That makes this one the true statement. So we would say that x is going to be greater than 4.5. So we want to find the one that's going to be true. Number 5. A runner ran 2/3 of a 5-kilometer race in 21 minutes. They ran the entire race at a constant speed. How long did it take to run the entire race? Okay, well, they did 2/3 of a 5-kilometer race. So 2/3 of a 5-kilometer race means how much did they actually run? Well, they did 10/3 of a 5K, okay, or 3 1/3. So they did 10/3 of that is how much they did, 10/3 of that, and they did that in 21 minutes. So 10/3 of the race they did in 21 minutes. That's their kilometers, and that's their minutes. So we set it up as a proportion to say, well, if they're going to do the whole 5K, how many minutes is that going to actually take? Okay? So to solve this here, we do some cross multiplying. All right? So this becomes 10/3 x equals 21 times 5 is 105. And then I can multiply by the reciprocal, 3/10, or 3/10 there, something along those lines. Okay, or I can multiply by 3 first of all, and then divide by 10, however you want to think about this. So when I multiply by 3, this becomes 315, and 315 divided by 10 is going to be 31.5. So how long did it take to run the entire race? 31.5 minutes. How many minutes did it take to run 1 kilometer? Well, that's a different question, right? We know that they ran 5 kilometers in 31.5 minutes. So the question is, to run 1 kilometer, how many minutes did that take? Right? That's your question. So it's a 5x. If you cross multiply this out, you end up with what? 5x equals 31.5. You divide both sides by 5. So then we do some long division here. X is going to be equal to 31.5 divided by 5, which ends up being equal to 6.3. So how many minutes to take 1 kilometer? 6.3 minutes. All right, number 6. Jada, Elena, and Lynn walked a total of 37 miles. So all together, 37 miles. Jada walked 4 more than Elena. So there's Elena. So Elena plus 4 is Jada. Lynn walked 2 more than Jada. So you have Jada's value, M, and the 4, and 2 more there. The diagram represents the situation. Find the number of miles that they each walked and explain and show your reasoning. Okay, so when we add all these together, it's going to equal how much? The total, 37. So what do we have? We actually have M here, plus another M, plus a 4, plus another M, plus a 4, plus a 2 is all going to equal 37. Now our M value is what? M actually represents what Elena did. So what I have is 1, 2, 3 M's plus 4 is 8, 9, 10 equals 37. We subtract 10, so 3M equals 27. Divide both sides by 3, and so M equals 9. Well, M is what Elena did. So Elena walked 9. Now Jada, she did what? She did 9 plus 4. So she did a total of 13. And Lynn did whatever Jada did, which was 13, plus 2 more, which is 15. And there we go. And your last one, number 7, select all the expressions that are equivalent to negative 36x, positive 54, minus 90. So, distribute and see. I have a negative there, positive, positive. Oops, that's not going to work. I wanted a negative, so nope. Here we have a negative, positive, negative. Looks good. Here we have a negative, negative. Nope, not gonna work. Negative, positive, negative. Awesome. Negative, positive, negative. Great. Negative, positive, and then this is negative, but notice that this is the first one, and it's saying that last time. We end up with what? You end up with a 2 times negative 90 is negative 180. The number's actually off. The other ones, the numbers are all fine, okay? So I didn't really work with the math there, but this one doesn't work because the numbers here is actually off, so it won't work. So your choices are going to be B, D, and E. That's it for today. We will see you next time.